Across every corner of the ancient world, from desert temples to mountain shrines, humanity told stories of creatures lurking just beyond the veil of the divine. These were not monsters of myth alone, they were warnings, guardians, punishers, and cosmic threats woven into the foundations of religion itself. Tonight, we uncover the demon beings that hid in plain sight within the world's oldest belief systems, creatures feared, worshipped, and sometimes even invoked. From Babylon to Egypt, from Vedic India to early Christianity, their shadows stretch across history. This is the secret bestiary humanity inherited and never truly escaped. The demon creatures hiding in every ancient religion. Before the gods, the first darkness. Long before the first gods carved order into the empty heavens, before stars were set like burning thrones in the sky, and before worlds were hammered upon the anvil of creation, there was only one thing, a presence so ancient that even eternity could not remember its birth. This was the first darkness. It was not evil, for evil had not yet been born. It was not chaos, because chaos requires something to oppose. It was not even a void, since a void implies the absence of something. The first darkness was the only thing that existed, and thus it was not a shadow but the original state of all reality, a silent, dreaming, formless presence drifting through an endless, dimensionless realm that had no direction and no time. The breathing night. The first darkness was not dead. In its infinite stillness, it breathed, slow, deep breaths that rippled across the formless expanse. Each exhale created a faint tremor, the earliest hint of vibration in the cosmos. Each inhale drew those tremors back into it, folding them into a shapeless abyss. These breaths became the first movement in all existence. They were not words, not thoughts, not will, only the instinctive stirring of a presence that did not yet know it existed. As the first darkness inhaled and exhaled across ageless cycles, the tremors began to take shape. Ripples compacted into waves. Waves condensed into rhythms. Rhythms deepened into pulses. And then, after an eternity of silent breathing, the first darkness felt something strange, a faint pressure inside itself, like a spark trying to push outward. It was the first light. 2. The spark that should not have been. The first darkness recoiled from the spark. The light was not yet bright, only an ember within the abyss, but its presence was blasphemy. For the first darkness had always been alone. It had never been challenged. Nothing had ever existed except itself. So what was this intruder? The spark expanded, pulsing with warmth, color, and radiant possibility. Where the first darkness was infinite stillness, the spark was movement. Where the first darkness was cold breath, the spark was heat. The spark was everything the first darkness was not, and that made it the first true anomaly in existence. The darkness tried to smother it. Its folds closed inward, smothering the spark on all sides. But the spark resisted. It did not fight, because it had no will, but its mere existence pushed back against the first darkness's eternal stillness. A tension formed. A pressure grew. And then the first darkness felt pain for the first time. From that pain came awareness. And from awareness came fear. 3. The birth of the first will. The first darkness, until now a dreaming, drifting presence, opened eyes it did not know it had. Not physical eyes, for matter did not yet exist, but awareness. It understood, in the most primitive way, that something threatened its dominion. That spark. That intrusion. That possibility. In this realization, the first darkness developed the first will, the earliest intention in all of creation. And that intention was simple. Destroy the spark. It contracted its entire immeasurable being around the intruding light. It crushed, suffocated, and folded itself upon the spark in an attempt to erase it. The spark answered this crushing force in the only way it could. It exploded. A detonation of pure radiance erupted outward, carving wounds through the first darkness. Light rushed in every direction, tearing open the abyss and spilling illumination across the formless realm. Where the light touched, boundaries appeared. Distances formed. Dimensions unfolded. Time shivered into existence. The first darkness screamed, not in sound, but in a violent convulsion that echoed through every new corner of reality. The spark had become the first light, the primordial radiance that would one day give birth to stars, worlds, and gods. 4. The division of reality. The explosion did not kill the first darkness, but it tore it apart, splitting its immeasurable form into countless drifting masses that recoiled from the newborn light. These drifting shadows were conscious fragments, each a piece of the original, primordial being. They became the first shades, the earliest proto-entities, ancestors of demons, void gods, night spirits, and abyssal horrors in countless mythologies yet to come. These fragments whispered to one another in the new echoing void. We have been wounded. We have been divided. The light has taken our dominion. But their whispers were soft, for light was expanding faster than their shadows could retreat. Soon, the first light began condensing, cooling, and forming structures, clusters of radiant substance that would eventually become the early scaffolding of the cosmos. The first darkness, still conscious but now weakened and fragmented, learned something devastating. Its rule was no longer absolute. The first war that preceded the gods. Before gods, titans, or creators existed, the first darkness waged a war that reality itself remembers through natural law. The darkness stretched its tendrils across the newborn cosmos, trying to smother the expanding light. But wherever it spread, the light pushed back. These early clashes became the foundation of cosmic duality, entropy against energy, cold against heat, shadow against radiance. When the first darkness attempted to reclaim the space stolen by the first light, it inadvertently shaped the earliest cosmic landscapes. The boundaries between them formed. The first voids. The first nebulae. The earliest particles of matter and antimatter. The seeds of all future cosmic order. The battle reshaped the universe itself. The first light condensed into burning spheres, the first protostars. The first darkness coiled around them, forming swirling oceans of dust and shadow. Nothing yet lived, but the war had carved the stage upon which life would one day appear. 6. The dawn of the protogods. As the first darkness and the first light continued their eternal conflict, something extraordinary began to emerge from the meeting place between them, a region where neither fully conquered the other. In this unstable boundary, sparks of awareness flickered. Not as chaotic as the first light, not as absolute as the first darkness, but a balance between them. These were the protogods, the earliest conceptual beings, entities shaped from the tension of opposites. They did not yet have forms, names, or myths, but they possessed the basic traits that later pantheons would inherit. Curiosity, will, potential, identity. They drifted into being, watching the ancient war unfold around them. The first darkness saw these new entities and recoiled in fury and terror. The spark had not only created light, it had created others. Others who were neither shadow nor pure radiance. Others who might one day eclipse the darkness entirely. The first darkness struck at the protogods, but they were protected by the balance of forces that birthed them. They survived, shimmering and changing, eventually developing their own powers. This was the earliest seed of mythology's fundamental idea. From the conflict between darkness and light, the gods arise. 7. The retreat of the first darkness. Though the war raged for epochs beyond mortal comprehension, the first darkness eventually understood a terrible truth. It could never destroy the first light. Not completely. Every attempt to smother radiance created heat, which ignited more light. Every wound inflicted upon stars created energy that fueled new explosions. The darkness discovered that the cosmos itself now resisted its dominion. So it retreated. Not in defeat, but in strategy. The first darkness slithered into the deepest regions of the newborn universe, into the wells of gravity, the folds between dimensions, the places where light struggled to reach. It became the cosmic background, the eternal shadow behind stars, the cold between galaxies. It wrapped itself around the borders of existence, watching and waiting. Though wounded, fragmented, and forced into hiding, the first darkness whispered a vow into the silent void. I was the first. When the light dies, I will be the last. 8. Legacy of the first darkness. The first darkness never faded. It lingered as the cold of deep space, the pull of black holes, the entropy that breaks down stars, the dark matter shaping galaxies, the shadow in every myth, the fear older than language. It became the foundation for countless mythological archetypes. The primordial night, Nyx, Nox, Not. The first chaos, Tiamat, Ginnungagap, Apiron. The devouring void, Apep, Jormungandr, Serpent of Void. The cosmic shadow, Erebus, Kuk, Tihom. But these later deities were only fragments, interpretations of an entity so ancient and vast that no mythology could fully contain it. The first darkness itself remained unpersonified, because to give it a name would be to give it limits. 9. Explanation, themes and symbolism. The story of Before the Gods, the first darkness explores one of the oldest concepts in myth-making and cosmology, the idea that darkness or chaos preceded all creation. Many ancient religions begin with an endless night or a formless void, Egypt's Nun, Greece's chaos, Mesopotamia's Tiamat, the Norse Ginnungagap, and the biblical Tihom. However, this tale expands the idea by presenting darkness not merely as absence, but as a sentient, primordial being whose very existence triggered the birth of light, time, and later gods. Key ideas explored include: 1. Darkness as the original state. In many cosmogonies, darkness is not evil, it simply is. This story keeps that philosophical purity. The first darkness does not begin as malicious. It becomes antagonistic only when challenged by something new. 2. Light as an intrusion. Rather than the gods creating light, the spark appears spontaneously, an anomaly within primordial existence. This echoes scientific cosmology, where the Big Bang emerges from a quantum fluctuation. 3. Duality as the engine of creation. The conflict between light and darkness shapes the structure of the universe. This reflects myths where opposition gives birth to creation, yin and yang, Marduk versus Tiamat, Ra versus Apophis. 4. Protogods as children of balance. Rather than emerging from either side, the early gods form from the boundary between forces, symbolizing that divinity is born from harmony rather than absolute extremes. 5. The eternal nature of darkness. Darkness does not die. It becomes entropy, cold, decay, and the invisible mass shaping galaxies, mirroring real astrophysics. 6. The first darkness as a cosmic archetype. The entity is not a demon nor a deity, but an existential archetype representing the unknown, the ancient, and the inevitable. Ext final vision. Even now, billions of years after the first light scattered its radiance, the first darkness remains, silent, watching, patient. Every star that dies returns to it. Every universe that collapses falls back into it. Every flame that flickers casts its shadow. The first darkness was the beginning. Mesopotamia, the children of Tiamat. In the beginning, before the first grain of silt settled on the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates, before cities carved their shapes into the fertile earth, there was only the sea. A boundless, undifferentiated ocean of salt and sweet waters swirling together in eternal darkness. In that primordial vastness, two beings drifted, Apsu, the fresh waters, and Tiamat, the great mother of the salty deep. Their union stirred creation itself. From their mingling came the first gods, luminous, curious beings who rose out of the waters like sparks cast from a cosmic forge. But this tale is not of those elder gods. This is the story of the others, the forgotten offspring, the half-formed children who were never meant to rule the heavens or shape the world. These were the creatures born in the turbulence of Tiamat's rage, the monstrous brood raised not from love, but from cosmic fury. These were the children of Tiamat. The awakening of the primordial mother. As the first generations of gods grew, they became loud. Their movements disturbed the waters, their laughter echoed through the deep, their arguments erupted like storms. Apsu, weary and ancient, looked upon them and felt only irritation. The new gods were wild, uncontrollable, and Apsu longed for silence. Tiamat, however, felt the stirring of maternal tolerance. She had given birth to this new order, and saw in them the seeds of future worlds. But when Apsu conspired to destroy them, even Tiamat's patience frayed. The young gods learned of his plan, and in a daring act, Ea, one of the cleverest of the early deities, slew Apsu before his fury could be unleashed. The death of her primordial mate shattered Tiamat. Her sorrow boiled into wrath, and her grief transformed into something darker than the abyss. The ocean churned. The wind stilled. And from the depths of her anguished heart, she decided to birth new beings, not gods, not mortals, but weapons. Beasts forged to avenge Apsu and to punish the gods who had defied the order of the deep. Thus began the creation of her monstrous army. The firstborn monsters. The waters of Tiamat began to twist, coil, and foam as she exhaled her divine rage. From the churning depths emerged the 11 abominations, creatures unlike anything the gods had ever seen. 1. The Basmu, the venomous winged serpent. The first to crawl from her womb was a serpent with wings like storm clouds and venom burning hot enough to melt basalt. Its hiss froze the waves. The mere beat of its wings could poison the air. Tiamat shaped this creature to strike at the gods with swift, lethal precision. 2. The Muzmahu, the many-headed dragon. Next emerged a creature crowned with 7 heads, each spitting flame, smoke, or acid. Its coils were so vast they could encircle mountains. Each head possessed its own mind and its own malice, an army contained within a single body. 3. The Mushusu, the furious serpent lion. A beast of impossible lineage, scaled like a serpent, clawed like a lion, and roaring with a voice that tore open the sky. This creature embodied raw destructive strength, crafted to tear apart divine flesh. 4. The Ugalu, the lion-headed storm demon. A towering figure with the head of a lion and talons like sickles, the Ugalu exhaled storms. Winds howled around it, cyclones formed at its feet. Wherever it stepped, the sea roared in obedience. 5. The Gitablulu, the scorpion men. Half divine warrior, half monstrous scorpion, these sentinels stood as guardians of the abyss. Their barbed tails dripped with venom, and their chitinous bodies were stronger than forged bronze. 6. The Kalulu, the fishmen. Born from the deepest trenches, these creatures bore the sleekness of fish and the cunning of men. They moved silently underwater, ready to constrict unsuspecting gods in their cold embrace. 7. The Kusariku, the bull men. Massive beings with the torsos of men and the bodies of bulls, they embodied endurance and unbreakable will. Their stampede shook the oceans themselves. 8. The Lamu, the mud-born guardians. These hairy warriors rose from the thick silt at the bottom of Tiamat's domain. Silent, tireless, and unyielding, they carried weapons shaped from primordial clay. 9. The Uridimu, the wolfmen. Savage and relentless, the Uridimu hunted anything that dared cross Tiamat's realm. Their senses rivaled the gods, and their jaws could snap celestial bones. 10. The horned serpent. A second serpent, but unlike the Basmu, this one carried wisdom twisted into cruelty. Its horns could summon lightning, its breath carried illusions. 11. The dragon of the deep. The largest of the brood, the embodiment of the ocean's crushing pressure. Its scales glistened like obsidian, and its roar echoed through all the waters of the earth. These were not beasts of nature. They were born of rage, shaped by grief, and destined to bring chaos. They were Tiamat's children, her army, her vengeance, and her legacy. The rise of Kingu, the blood-marked. But Tiamat's war needed more than beasts. She needed a general. From her tears and the blood of Apsu, she shaped Kingu, a giant radiant with dark power. He was unlike the others, not a monster, not a god, but something in between. Tiamat entrusted him with the Tablet of Destinies, a cosmic artifact granting authority over the very order of the universe. With it, Kingu became the rightful ruler of creation, at least in the eyes of the deep. Under Kingu, the monstrous army organized. The sea boiled as they marched. The skies dimmed. The young gods trembled. They had never faced anything like the children of Tiamat. The gods' desperation. In their celestial court, the gods gathered in fear. None dared face Tiamat, none would challenge her monstrous offspring. Their thunderbolts, winds, and flames seemed insignificant beside such primal chaos. But then arose Marduk, son of Ea. A young god, yet brimming with confidence and untapped power. He offered to fight Tiamat, but only if he were granted kingship over all gods should he succeed. The council agreed. Armed with storms, lightning, and divine weapons crafted for this singular confrontation, Marduk descended into the deep. The cosmic war, gods versus the children of Tiamat. The waters split as Marduk entered Tiamat's domain. Darkness pressed around him. Silence followed him like a shadow. Then came the roar. The Musmahu struck first, all 7 heads lunging. Marduk countered with a whirlwind so violent that it snapped 3 of the heads instantly. Lightning severed the 4th. Fire consumed the rest. The Ugalu followed, summoning storms to counter Marduk's own. Their clash turned the sea into a battleground of winds. Marduk's control prevailed, he inverted the storm and crushed the demon in its own winds. The Basmu darted forward, venom dripping. Marduk trapped it in a net of divine winds, turning its own venom against it until it dissolved into nothing. The Gitablulu struck as a united force, tails whipping, claws snapping, but Marduk blinded them with burning light before tearing them down with crackling thunder. The Uridimu pounced. The Kalulu surged from below. The Lamu charged. One by one, Marduk shattered them, scattering their bodies across the abyss. At last, only the dragon of the deep remained. It wrapped around Marduk, dragging him toward crushing darkness, but he detonated a burst of cosmic fire, splitting the creature in half. The battlefield fell silent. Only Tiamat remained. The jewel of creation and destruction. Tiamat rose before Marduk, vast, serpentine, her body stretching across horizons. Her eyes burned with millennia of grief. Her roar ripped the sea and sky apart. Marduk stood firm. Tiamat unleashed torrents of poison and storms. Marduk countered with winds and fire. The two forces collided, forming the first great maelstrom of the cosmos. Then, with the cunning of Ea and the ferocity of the gods behind him, Marduk cast a net woven from the breath of the 4 winds. It entangled Tiamat. She thrashed, screamed, unleashed the fury of the ancient sea, but the net tightened. In a final surge, Marduk fired an arrow that pierced her heart. The Great Mother fell. Her body became the foundation of the world, sky from her ribs, mountains from her spine, rivers from her blood. Her defeat brought order, stability, and the shape of the world that humanity would one day inherit. But her children did not vanish. The fate of the children of Tiamat. The surviving monsters were enslaved, banished, or forced to become guardians of sacred places. Their forms lingered in myth, etched into Mesopotamian art, invoked in rituals, feared in omens. The Mushusu became a symbol of divine authority, placed under Marduk's command. The Gitablulu became guardians of the gates of the underworld. The Kalulu and Kusariku became protective spirits invoked on amulets. Some of the children slipped into the shadows of myth, taking refuge in the deep wilds of the earth. And Kingu, Tiamat's chosen, paid the greatest price. The gods captured him, stripped him of the Tablet of Destinies, and executed him. From his blood, mixed with clay, they shaped humanity, a race born from rebellion, chaos, and divine punishment. Thus, humanity carries within it the spark of Tiamat's children. Explaining the myth. This story, rooted in the Enuma Elish, is one of the oldest cosmic battles ever recorded. It represents 1. Order versus chaos. Tiamat embodies primordial chaos, the unshaped ocean. Marduk represents order, structure, and civilization. Their battle symbolizes humanity's struggle to impose meaning on an unpredictable world. 2. The mythic origins of monsters. The children of Tiamat explain the origins of monstrous beings feared in the ancient world. They represent natural forces, storms, venom, deep waters, personified as foes of divine order. 3. Humanity's dual nature. Humans being created from Kingu's blood signifies that we arise from rebellion and chaos. It explains our capacity for violence, creativity, destruction, and ambition. 4. Political theology. The myth also justified Marduk's supremacy in Babylon. By defeating Tiamat and her monstrous children, Marduk proved himself the supreme deity, legitimizing Babylon's political power. The story of the children of Tiamat is more than a myth, it is a cosmic drama about creation, rebellion, and the monstrous forces lurking beneath the surface of the world. It is a reminder that every civilization, no matter how orderly, is built on the bones of ancient chaos. And though Tiamat was defeated, her children never truly vanished. Egypt, the devourers of the Duat. Before the first mound rose from the cosmic waters of Nun, before Ra's light carved day out of eternal night, the Duat already existed. It was not yet the structured underworld that mortals came to fear, but a vast, shifting realm of darkness, hunger, and half-formed spirits, creatures made from the residue of forgotten gods, abandoned dreams, and the raw instincts of the universe. Ancient Egyptian priests called them Amushu, but in the oldest temple walls, those no tourists see, sealed beneath layers of limestone, they were described with a more terrifying name. The devourers of the Duat. They were beings that predated judgment, morality, and divine order. They did not punish sin nor reward virtue. They simply fed on fear, on meaning, and, most of all, on the souls that slipped unprotected into their grasp. This is their story. Before Marat. In the time before time, the Duat was not an underworld but a wilderness of spirits. Fragments of potential creation drifted like embers across a limitless night. The first gods had not yet shaped the cosmic laws, so chaos reigned freely. The Rasun had no path, Osiris had no throne, and Marat, truth, order, balance, was only an idea waiting to be spoken. From these drifting soul fragments formed primordial hungers. They were not demons in the modern sense. Egyptian religion had no absolute evil. Instead, they were cosmic necessities, forces meant to devour what did not belong, to clear the spiritual refuse of the universe. But in the absence of a structured cosmos, their appetite grew wild. The oldest among them was called Shakatrekti, she who slices the shadows. Her body was long and serpentine, covered in plates like overlapping feathers. Her jaw unhinged like a crocodile's, yet her face resembled a lioness carved from obsidian. Her many eyes never blinked, because she observed everything, searching for whatever she could consume. Alongside her prowled the twin spirits Nezret and Nephron, depicted as gaunt jackal-bodied creatures with human-like hands and elongated skulls etched with hieroglyphs of hunger. These were the Shadow Eaters, and wherever a lost soul wandered, they were already waiting. But not all devourers were predators of form. Some were concept beings, winds that shredded memory, currents that pulled consciousness apart, voices that lured spirits into oblivion. When Ra rose from the waters of Nun and illuminated the cosmos, these beings recoiled, forced back into the deepest layers of the Duat. Yet they did not vanish. They simply waited for darkness to return. 2. The birth of judgment. When the gods established cosmic order, they assigned roles to every spirit and force in existence. Many chaotic beings were tamed or destroyed. But the devourers were too ancient, too fundamental to erase. Instead, they were incorporated. Osiris, the newly crowned Lord of the Afterlife, understood that destruction was not an enemy of life, it was its companion. So, he allowed the Devourers to remain but gave them purpose. The greatest change came when Ma'at herself shaped the weighing of the heart. A soul would enter the Hall of Two Truths, its heart placed upon scales against the feather of Ma'at. Only the pure of spirit could pass. But the impure, the corrupt, the deviant, those who violated cosmic balance, became prey. The Devourers did not resent this restructuring. Hunger is hunger, they cared little for the circumstances under which food reached them. However, one among them adapted most famously. Amit, the crocodile-lion-hippo hybrid spirit known today as the Soul Eater. Yet Amit was not one of the original Devourers. She was crafted from them, a guardian created to embody their hunger but bind it to cosmic order. The Devourers themselves continued to roam beyond the Hall of Judgment, deeper in the labyrinthine layers of the Duat. Priests called these deeper realms the silent fields of teeth, the lake of fire that moves, the tunnels where names die. Here, the old Devourers still fed, but no longer indiscriminately. They consumed souls that sought to flee judgment, sorcerers who tried to cheat death, spirits whose names had been forgotten, and shadows cast off from the hearts of the living. They became the necessary destruction, the cosmic cleaners of what could not be redeemed. 3. The journey of the dead. Every Egyptian soul, noble or poor, king or farmer, had to pass through the Duat. And the Devourers were part of that journey. When a soul entered the underworld, it encountered 12 gates, each guarded by serpents, lions, or fire-breathing spirits. The final gate led to the Hall of Two Truths. But the path between the gates was not empty. This was where the Devourers hunted. A soul carried protection, spells painted inside coffins, amulets placed between bandages, recitations memorized before death. The Book of the Dead, the pyramid texts, and the coffin texts offered incantations that named the Devourers and restrained them. For to name a Devourer was to deny it the ability to unmake you. One spell reads, "O you who consume shadows, who swallow the forgotten, I have not lost my name. I pass unharmed. But those without names, without offerings, without memories left in the world, these souls were helpless." The Devourers sensed them instantly. The Memora Lake. In the third region of night existed a dark lake whose waters shimmered like oil. This was the Lake of Unraveling, a place where forgotten souls drifted like bubbles. Beneath the surface lurked Nezret and Nephron, their long limbs gliding silently as they waited for a wandering consciousness to touch the water. One priest described it as a place where even one's reflection refuses to remain whole. The Devourers of the lake fed not on the soul itself but on its story, its identity, until nothing remained but a hollow echo. 4. The Rebellion of Shadows. Once, only once, the Devourers attempted to overthrow the established order. It happened during the year mortals remembered as the Year of the Silence of Ra, when the sun god was wounded by the serpent Apep and drifted dimly for 9 days. During those nights, the boundaries between layers of the Duat loosened. Light waned. Shadows lengthened. Shakatrekti gathered the oldest Devourers and whispered, "The sun weakens. The gods tire. Let us reclaim the Duat as it was, free, wild, and ripe." The Devourers swarmed upward, invading the borderlands between the living and the dead. Humans dreamed of black serpents whispering their names, jackal-faced figures tearing memories from their minds, and enormous lion-headed shadows swallowing voices. The veil wore thin. For a brief moment, the ancient chaos threatened to reclaim all. But Ra recovered. With him came the gods, Thoth with his spells, Sekhmet with her fire, and Horus with his piercing sky blades. Osiris himself rose from his throne, binding the Devourers with ropes of green life magic. Their rebellion was crushed. Shakatrekti was imprisoned within the 6th cavern, chained by spells carved into her own bones. Nezret and Nephron remained free but were forced deeper into the Duat, into layers mortals never travel. After this rebellion, the gods rewrote sections of the afterlife, making it harder for lost souls to wander. Paths became more structured. Gates more guarded. Spells more complex. It was a tightening of cosmic security in response to a threat mortals never fully learned about. What the living believed. To Egyptians, the Devourers were frightening not because they were evil, but because they represented a truth. Not all parts of the soul can be saved. Not all identity survives death. Not all wanderers find judgment. Some priests taught that the Devourers were simply the natural decomposition of the soul, much like a body decomposes on earth. Others believed they were guardians preventing unworthy spirits from resurrecting into the world of the living, an ancient fear Egyptians had of restless ghosts. The Duat was not only a place of punishment, it was a system. A cosmic machine. And the Devourers were part of its engine. 6. The Last Devourer. In later eras, during the time of the New Kingdom, Egyptian texts mention a creature known as Sekhmet, the Whisperer in Sand. She was described as a pale, wingless vulture-like being with talons like sickles and a voice like wind-scratching stone. Unlike the others, she fed not on souls but on regret. Travelers who reached the ninth gate often heard her whisper, "Turn back. Your heart is heavy. You will be devoured." Many did turn back, and in doing so, lost themselves, becoming food for the older devourers lurking inside passages. But those who faced her, acknowledging their failures, could pass unharmed. For she was not an enemy. She was a test. In this way, the Devourers, though terrifying, functioned within Maat's cosmic balance. They stripped away illusions, falsehoods, and empty boasts, leaving only the truth of a soul's essence. What survived judgment became eternal. What did not became sustenance for the oldest hungers in creation. 7. Explanation: why these entities existed. Egyptian religion did not divide beings into good versus evil. Instead, everything had purpose. The Devourers fit into three key theological functions. 1. They explained what happened to souls that failed to reach judgment. Ancient Egyptians feared becoming a restless spirit. The Devourers symbolized the dangers of dying without proper burial, memory, or identity. 2. They personified spiritual decomposition. Just as the body returns to earth, the unanchored parts of the soul could be recycled by these beings. 3. They reinforced the importance of Maat. The Devourers existed outside order. Thus, the only protection against them was living a balanced life, being remembered, and performing rituals correctly. To be forgotten was to be devoured. 8. The final truth. In the last chamber of the Duat, Osiris sits on his throne. Before him stretches a river of luminous green water, the river of life, where purified souls sail into eternity. But beyond that river, hidden by mists, are caverns mortals never see. There, the Devourers still roam, ancient as the first shadows, patient as grave dust. Their hunger is endless, but not malicious. They simply fulfill the role carved for them at the dawn of creation. They are reminders that not all parts of existence reach the light. That the cosmos, to function, must consume as much as it creates. And so Egyptians whispered a prayer. May my name be remembered. May my heart be light. May I not fall into the jaws of the Devourers of the Duat. Because in the end, every soul must make the journey, and every shadow has teeth.